G'day Bomber fans, we finally got there in the end. This is the last of the draft class profile videos, Zak Johnson. And even though he was taken at pick 70, one of the last taken in the entire national draft, this is an exciting one. As you can see by the title of the video, I honestly think this could be viewed as one of the biggest steals of the draft in the future. Now if you want to hear about the other guys, like Kako, Clark, even Day Wicks, I've got a playlist with all those profile videos out, but let's get onto this one first. It is time to talk about Zak Johnson, who, by the way, is now the youngest player on our list. Just a little fun fact for you before we get into the video. Zak Johnson, 185 centimeters, pretty well built as well. Pick 70 in the draft, the second to last pick of the 2024 National Draft, but far from an uninspiring pick. This is widely viewed as a potential steal, and there is a reason for that. This guy has put together a really strong CV over the last couple of years, and he's shown plenty in his junior footy career, especially this season though. Johnson's work in the midfield and across halfback had many talking about him pre-draft. He's a really classy operator, more of that outside accumulator, but one who you just love the ball in the hands of. He's got good speed, he's got good smarts about him, and more importantly, he's also a good leader. He was the co-captain for the Northern Knights. Despite being one of the younger players in this entire draft pool, he was born on Christmas Eve, or the day before, I think, December. And better than that, he also took home the Knights' best and fairest this year as well, ahead of guys like Jesse Tatoli, who was taken in the first round, and Tom Sims, who was taken early in the second round. So that is coaches saying this guy had a better year, all-round year, than some of the players taken ahead of him in the draft, and that's good. I'm going to talk about him more as a player when we identify his strengths and weaknesses, because there is a reason he was taken quite low down. But I do want to just reiterate how impressive he is as a leader, and also talk about the links he currently has to the club. I don't think this was intentional, but Essendon have done really well this draft to bring in players that have connections to the club in some way. So Kako and Nguyen are obviously academy players. They've trained with us lots. Archer Day Wicks was actually training with us through the AFL Academy to start the year. You got Angus Clark and Reece Unwin, who are country boys that are geographically linked to some of our club's leaders. And now Johnson, a Vic Metro squad member who actually went to school with Nate Caddy and Isaac Kako. So he's actually played plenty of footy with those two already, and he was quick to head out to training after being drafted. His name was read out late on Thursday night, and he was in attendance for his first training session at the hangar the following day on Friday, along with Kako and Nguyen. The others have a bigger move ahead of them. They'll be all link up with the team on Monday, so after this is recorded, but I believe this will be out on the Tuesday, so you've probably already seen them at training by now. Look at Johnson's stats. On face value, they're absolutely exceptional. He was averaging 25 disposals a game for the Northern Knights. That is an excellent output. He's an accumulator. He plays mostly in the midfield, a bit in defence, but he still managed to hit the scoreboard 9 times, 9 goals in 12 games, and that's a really solid output for a midfielder who rests a bit in the other half of the field as well. So he was an absolute star in the Talent League. He was named the RMC Talent League Team of the Year on the bench. Him and Kako were both in that side. He was obviously the best and fairest winner for Northern Knights. His Vic Metro form was obviously a little bit less impressive, but to be fair, that midfield was stacked. He couldn't really feature ahead of guys like Jagger Smith and Levi Ashcroft, so he was primarily out of the engine room. I honestly think if he was playing for WA or Allies or SA, he would be much higher up draft boards, because we would have seen more of what he can do in the guts at champs, and that is where you really want to impress. And unfortunately, he was just off to the side a bit for Metro. He did okay, but he didn't get to his heights like he did in the Talent League. Those Talent League stats, even half of those as a first-year player in the AFL would be excellent, to be honest. 25 touches, it looks good, but when you watch him, the ball in his hands 25 times, that's who you want with the ball. So, and now I guess is a good time to look at what makes him such a promising prospect with his strengths. Strengths, well, the big one is ball use. This guy is really smart with ball in hand, and tie in the next one. Actually, tie in the next two. We're going to link all three of these first ones together to talk about ball use, decision-making, and composure. So for starters, under pressure, he is very calm. He is one of those players who seems to move quite slowly, but it's really just him surveying options in fast time. He's a very good decision-maker, rarely does anything too silly, and that's because of how composed he is. I really like players like that. They don't rush through moments and turn over the pill. Johnson is calm, collected, smart. He has a high IQ, and to top off the Holy Trinity, he is excellent by hand and foot. He is closer to a big-bodied midfielder than anything, just the way he looks and his stature, but the way he plays is more like that classy, I guess Pendlebury-like mid. Leadership, I mean, he captained his Talent League team, a pretty strong team too, and versatility, he's played midfield, he's played off halfback, and I think although I see him more as that outside, big presence mid for the future. The fact that he plays or can play in defence can help him fast-track a debut next season. He's ready-made, he's built, he's solid, he's a good athlete. Might need to work a bit more on endurance for AFL games over the pre-season, but if he does that, I see no reason as to why he can't make his debut. This guy for pick 70 is just a balanced and rounded player. His strengths really are all about his ball use and smarts and leadership, but you can still add more to that. This guy is not your regular pick 70. This isn't an Archer Day Wicks who could be anything if he puts it together. I genuinely think Zak Johnson might be a handy player for the club. I'll get through his weaknesses in a bit because there are quite a bunch, but I think if he can brush those up, there is no reason as to why he can't play next year and play more in 2026 as well. I think he has the makings of a really rounded footballer. He just looks like someone who knows how to play the game. Weaknesses, now I think it's maybe just the position he plays and the role he plays, but I feel like for his size and build, I don't really know if I've properly seen him at his most physical and intense. There are some midfielders who you just fear to go up against in a contest, and to me Johnson isn't really that type of player. Maybe that's just from what I've seen personally. Maybe in games I didn't watch he took some heads off, but from what I've seen, I think his contested game and his physicality, his intensity, it isn't as strong as what it should be for a guy as built as he is. Defense, I mean, he plays down there, but I wouldn't trust him to be that defensive defender. Really, this is an attacking minded player. He's a ball user who progresses the ball forward. He's someone you want to have the ball in the hands of, and if you look at his strengths, you'll think, why is he so low down on draft rankings? It's probably because of this half of his game, I reckon. He's really rounded and balanced in his attacking game with ball in hand, but without the ball, I think there are some things he will need to work on a little bit in an AFL system. As I say a lot though, weaknesses are not always a bad thing. Sometimes it's good to have weaknesses. If you have none as a draftee, your ceiling is lower, but think about how good Johnson could be if he brushes up a few of these. I can see him playing down back early. A preseason in that role could help. It could help him become more defensively orientated and develop more as that two-way runner. That's running patterns, by the way, tagged in there. I don't really know how good his tank is. He had a shoulder injury that kept him out of the combine, so he didn't test, but some work to his tank could help him develop his running patterns more and be that up and back player. But yeah, those are his weaknesses. So what should we expect from him next year and beyond? Well, 2025, I mean, I don't really see a reason to suggest he can't play, to be honest, next year. I think he could be used at some point if he impresses in the VFL. This isn't a high ceiling patience pick. It's not a project player. This is a guy who could play in his first season, even though he's a low draft pick. He's built enough. He's played good footy over a few seasons. He obviously needs to address some of those weaknesses, but if he does that and if he's playing good reserves level footy, I think a debut would be on the cards. He does have a 2-year contract, so he's got time on his hands. I do think we'll see him play AFL footy in the next 2 years, but because he is that low draft pick, he kind of does need to impress if he wants that extension at some stage. But honestly, I back him in to do that. I like this pickup a lot. I think he can, at the very least, be a handy player for us in the future, whether it's down back or in the guts. I think he starts in defence early, or maybe on a wing if his endurance impresses enough. He has those flanker capabilities, but can eventually grow into a midfield role as older players start to decrease. This kid will hopefully be waiting there for us to be excited about, and it really does help that he's a natural leader too. We've lacked those over the years, but now we hopefully have one in Zak Johnson. I like him. I was very happy with this pickup. I was surprised, but I was happy. I think he could be a really handy player for us in the future. And that is Zak Johnson summed up, and with that, it's now every Essendon draftee summed up as well. So that is the last of the real constant uploads for now, I think. From here, it's probably going to be only 3 to 4 times a week. There'll be some training updates, some news updates, maybe if I'm bored, there'll be some injury updates as well. And if you've got any other video ideas, let me know in the comments down below. I'll try and work on them over the summer, but that is all for now. Like if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new, and as always, go Bombers.